Hi, I'm Lena Rao. Welcome to our Ask a VC show where we put VCs in the hot seat. Today we're joined by Spark Capital partner Bijan Sabet. Bijan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All the way from the East Coast. You're based in Boston.
All the way, yeah.
Really excited about it. Let me just go into a little bit of your bio. You were one of the co-founders of Spark Capital, and you've backed Twitter very early and served on the company's board from 2008 to 2011. You've also led investments in Tumblr, recently acquired by Yahoo, Jelly, Stack Exchange, Runkeeper, Foursquare, Boxy, just acquired by Samsung, OMG Pop, which was famously acquired by Zynga, and The Platform, which was acquired by Comcast. That's quite a list. Yeah. We're really excited to have you in the studio. I'm curious, I want to talk a little bit about investment syndicates, because I think that's something that you hear a lot about here in the Valley, and even on the East Coast. You see a lot of East Coast firms kind of sticking together on some of the investments. You've had a particular syndicate with Union Square Ventures where you guys tend to back some of your companies together, Foursquare, Tumblr. What's behind it? How does it work? Do you kind of sit in a room and say, we're going to start, working together on this, or does it just happen naturally?
Yeah, I think for us, it feels like a more natural relationship. I knew Fred before there was a Union Square Ventures and before there was Spark Capital. So it's a personal connection in many cases. But also we talk about things that are of interest and the types of entrepreneurs we like working with. I mean, I've met some VCs that don't like backing first-time founders. And that's not how we work. It's not clearly how Union Square Ventures works. And there's other firms that kind of look at the world the way we look at it, particularly at early stages. And so I think those connections just kind of form.
So tell me a little bit about Spark Capital. You've co-founded the firm. You guys just raised a new fund earlier this year, your fourth, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you've backed some pretty impressive companies here. It's been a long evolution. So why did you found the firm? And tell me how things have evolved to this point.
Yeah, I mean, when we started in 2005, it was, our attitude was that we were going to be singularly focused on the consumer and then kind of work backwards from there. And that was not normal. Most VCs were investing in the enterprise space. It's still the case today that most VCs invest in the enterprise space. And we felt like if we could all have the same kind of focus, that as an entrepreneur, you can work with any of us and all of us, that we weren't this diverse team of an enterprise person, a consumer person, a healthcare person. And I always felt like as a former entrepreneur, I always wanted that type of relationship. And we felt like that would be a really good thing for us. And also, we can all be passionate about the kinds of companies we're backing. It wouldn't be academic, it would be something really from the heart.
Has there been any shift over the years in terms of your investments, the size, the stage, later versus earlier?
Yeah, this is our fourth fund, and the funds have gotten a little bit bigger, but we're mostly early stage. We do seed and Series A. Our first investment in Tumblr was $350,000, and OMG Pop was $1 million. So that's typically what we do. But there are cases, I would say.
Will you lead? Sometimes?
No, mostly.
Mostly, okay.
Yeah. So we did that in Tumblr, we did it at OMG Pop. So I would say, again, probably 80% of the time we either lead or co-lead an early stage investment. And that's how we do it.
Great. Well, now that we've got my questions behind us, I want to switch over to some of our reader questions. This one, I'm sure, is something that you probably have to be mindful of when you're examining at the early stage. How do you determine whether a potential investment is too much of a competitor to one of the startups that you've already invested in? And as my follow-up to that, how do you know if it's going to pivot? I mean, you don't necessarily know that, but can you forecast that could potentially go into a direction?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of do two things. First, we use our own judgment. We say, hey, does this look and feel like something we already are investing in? And if the answer is yes, then we're out. We just say to the new founder, we say, this is too close to the other company, and here's why. Sometimes that founder tells us we're wrong, and we talk about it. But if we feel in our gut, we just bow out. And then, but if we get comfortable, but we feel like there's still area where we just want to make double sure, then we just connect the founders. So, for example, we invested in Tumblr 6 months before we invested in Twitter. And we invested in Tumblr first. And so we basically just connected David Karp and Jack Dorsey. We said, we don't think there's a conflict. We think these are complementary. I was a user of both products. I found them both great. And so we just connected those two. They talked. They said, hey, we think we're complementary, and we made the investment.
Oh, well, that's great.
But on the pivot thing, you can't predict that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, so it sounds like you actually can, I mean, the fact that there's communication between the potential founders and that you loop them in probably at a pretty early stage.
We do.
Then there seems like you're in the clear, right, in case that there is any conflict there.
Yeah. I mean, there have been times where we've looped people together and they say, hey, these things are competitive, and we still feel like they're not, and we've bowed out. But in our mind, we're like, these are not competitive. And that's a little frustrating, but we just feel like we've got to do that.
Well, that's an interesting sort of segue into, like, you know, when you're talking about David Karp and others, how much do you take into account founder personality before investing, and how important is it, and what are you looking for? Because you've had a lot of, you know, individual personalities. You know, you have to, you know, you've got Dennis Crowley, David Karp, you know, many others. You know, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, the people that you mentioned and others, I mean, we consider ourselves very fortunate that they would let us become shareholders in the company and partners. You know, my own personal feeling is, like, I want to feel some connection. You know, you end up working with founders for the life of the company, and you want to feel like you can work together. And so that's something I spend a lot of time. It's almost like when you're joining a company, it's kind of that level of thinking. Do I trust the person? Do we get along? Do we see the world the same way? So it's all of that. And then I look for somebody who is building something they really want to see in the world. It's not a academic exercise like where's the white space, but it's more like that they just want it to exist, you know. And if we feel that way too, that's when we get involved.
I've talked to a lot of VCs who've said that, and entrepreneurs too, that have said that when you pick your investor, especially, you know, at the C level, at a lead, you know, it's like getting married.
It
like
is.
You have to spend a lot of time together. And how much time do you spend with some of the entrepreneurs you're backing?
You know, with David Karp, it was over a year. You know, with Dennis Crowley, it was probably over a year.
Before you ended up investing. That's a long time.
Yeah, I begged Evan Biz to let me invest for about 6 months. So it varies. But I do think you have to take time. I mean, I think these situations where these accelerators run these demo days and then these investor pitches and people are making these decisions, it almost feels like an arranged marriage of some kind, and it just feels really bizarre.
Which sometimes doesn't work out.
Which sometimes doesn't work out, and I just feel like it is a marriage, and I think that, and it's a very complicated one, and I think you should take your time and figure it out.
I'm curious, like, going from that point of, you know, what can go wrong there. From an investor perspective, what's the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make when pitching you or trying to, you know, present their idea to you? You know, at the seed stage, it can be tough, but you know, there's not, you know, always product market fit or revenue or things like that. But what would you say at the pitch stage is the biggest mistake?
I think for early stage companies and when they're meeting with us and trying to tell us their idea, the biggest mistake I see is, I guess there's a few things. You know, sometimes we see entrepreneurs, they spend, you know, 90% of the meeting talking about their backgrounds, their track record, you know, the market size, the potential market size, and all we want to talk about is, like, why are they building this? Like, what is it, like, that it's motivating them to do it? Because the reality, startups are crazy hard. You know, it's a David and Goliath thing every day. And the only way you can make it is if there's something that's really compelling you to do it. So we don't really want to hear about the market size. We don't want to hear about, you know, 15 years of operating background, or, you know, how the, you know, dinosaurs once ruled the land. Like, we want to spend time talking about the product, you know, why they're building it, why it's going to be great, what does it do today, what's it going to do tomorrow. And the biggest mistake we see is, like, it takes, you know, forever to talk about that.
Yeah.
And that somehow we got to flip that around.
Are there any entrepreneurs, without excluding some of your other, you know, babies or whatever, are there any entrepreneurs who've done that really well when they came to pitch you?
Oh, excluding the...
I mean, you have a lot of babies per se,
babies.
right? Yeah.
They're not babies.
Well, they're not babies, but you have a lot of kids when it comes to your portfolio. But, you know, are there any entrepreneurs who have been able to really master that pitch?
Oh, sure. Sure. I mean, you know, we're not investors in Square, and Jack Dorsey's Square pitch was, like, the most compelling thing we've seen. There are plenty of them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, and
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you in the studio.
Great. Thanks.